Horror has been a beloved genre for centuries, with its origins tracing back to folklore in ancient times. Since its conception, storytellers have evolved to be able to tell their audiences horror stories in a variety of mediums, including film. The first horror film was a 3-minute-long picture created in 1896 by French director Georges Méliès and was called Le Manoir du Diable, or House of the Devil. Since then, horror has become one of the most diverse genres with many renowned and beloved characters by the horror fandom, but there are few decades that left as much of an impact on the genre and mainstream media than the 70s. In 2019, Forbes magazine released a list of the top 25 highest-grossing horror films of all time. 9 out of those 25 came out of the 1970s. With all the controversies going on at that time, horror filmmakers had so many fears to pull on to make people want to go see the movies they were making. If you combine that with the rush of dopamine and endorphins that comes from watching horror flicks, you have the perfect formula for entertaining people from the decade and beyond. Using IMDB's top 15 most influential horror movies and Forbes' top 25 highest grossing horror movies of all time, let's break down some of the movies that left the biggest impact from that decade. Number 5 on our list is Richard Donner's 1976 film, The Omen. The Omen was nominated for 10 Academy Award nominations, and actually won an Oscar for the Best Music and Original Score. The film combined the talents of many individuals who would go on to contribute to movie favorites such as Alien, Poltergeist, and even Harry Potter. With the prior success of The Exorcist only 3 years before, the similar storyline of a demonic figure taking over a young child was sure to gain some type of popularity, and it did, as The Omen absolutely terrified audiences upon its release. The film's popularity was catapulted when rumors of the production being cursed started circulating. Producer Harvey Bernhard actually received warning from an LA Times advertising executive saying that the devil didn't want them to make the picture. The events that ensued before, during, and after filming make the warning even more eerie. Lead actor Gregory Peck's son committed suicide 2 months before the film was meant to start shooting, and Peck himself faced catastrophe when his plane was struck by lightning on his way to London. A series of other terrible events took place, but one of the most notable came after the film's release. John Richardson, who executed the infamous decapitation scene for the movie, encountered a different version of the tragedy in his real life. After working on another movie in Holland, he got into a terrible car accident. While he survived, his assistant, who was a passenger in the car, was beheaded. A sign nearby where the accident occurred showed that it took place 66.6 kilometers away from a town called, wait for it, Omen. While it is impossible to know if the curse of the Omen was real, the stories stick with horror fans everywhere, and it is part of what makes it such a staple in the horror community. The next movie on our list is home to one of the horror community's most beloved villains, Michael Myers. That's right, it's John Carpenter's 1978 slasher film, Halloween. The amount of work put into the $320,000 movie is amazing in and of itself, with shooting being wrapped after only 21 days, and each individual leaf needing to be painted to make it look like October and spring. Carpenter also created the infamous score by himself to avoid cutting into the measly budget. Despite the accreditation given by many fans, Halloween didn't actually invent the slasher film. Films like Psycho and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre had already been released and found major success. The problem was that they attracted a lot of media attention, negative media attention, and this caused a lot of bigger film companies to not want to take them on as projects. This resulted in a lot of slasher filmmakers being left to fend for themselves in the independent film industry. With the amount of success it had, many fans may find it hard to believe that Halloween was actually an independent film. The care taken in the storytelling, the fact that it did not objectify women, and because it didn't victimize the villain the same way many prior slasher films had, bigger companies couldn't help but notice the hard work and dedication put into Carpenter's film. It resulted in an uptick in creation of slasher films and their massive popularity until the turn of the century. On to number 3, the 1979 horror sci-fi classic, Ridley Scott's Alien. The basic concept of Alien was anything but new. Many movies had already introduced the idea of humans being terrorized by aliens, and with Star Wars and 2001: A Space Odyssey having already been released, the idea of those types of movies being set in space wasn't exactly original. Yet Alien remains one of the most revolutionary horror movies of all time, and it's because of its execution and the underlying themes within it. Alien does not follow a group of kids out to have a good time like many horror movies before it. It follows a group of adults with families and lives who are meant to be doing a job. They don't necessarily want to be where they are and are only trying to get home from the beginning, which makes the audience sympathize and root for them from the start. The most notable factor that makes Alien so important is that it's actually the first horror blockbuster film to be considered a feminist production. It also is one of the first horror films to be centered around sexual politics. Instead of serving women up as screaming, horrified weaklings to the villain, Ridley Scott wanted to switch that around and make the men the victims. His main objective was to take the unwanted sexual violence and advances that women often have to endure and flip it on the male audience. Just looking at Kent's death in the movie, where he is forcefully impregnated and killed from the fetus that emerges out of his chest, is enough to say that Scott accomplished his goal. However, one would be remiss not to mention Sigourney Weaver's performance as the strong-willed and determined Ripley, who set the precedent of the final girl in the Alien franchise. Alien introduced a whole new way of integrating real-world problems into the horror genre, and the continued oppression of women in present day is what keeps it so relevant. Despite the abundance of alien horror movies that ensued, none of them could live up to the storytelling and visuals which make Alien such a staple today. Number 2 on Forbes' list, and ours, is William Friedkin's 1973 staple, The Exorcist. The Exorcist was based on William Peter Blatty's novel and the first horror movie to be nominated for Best Picture of the Oscars. Only 6 horror movies have been nominated, with Silence of the Lambs being the sole winner, so this was kind of an honor. With the Vietnam War and instances like the Kent State shooting, a film about a child suffering at the hands of something which he has no control over heavily impacted audiences in the 1970s, and it made it one of the best examples of political representation in horror films. It quickly gained the title of one of the scariest films of all time, which it retains in present day. There are reports of people being so distraught in theaters that they passed out. As it turns out, Linda Blair's exorcism may have not been the only conflict with the film. Friedkin's masterpiece, much like The Omen, is rumored to have been cursed, due to a lot of problems that the crew encountered while filming. The house they were meant to use as a set burned down, delaying their schedule immensely, but eerily the room where Linda's exorcism takes place remained untouched. A series of deaths surrounded the cast and crew members, and 2 of the actors, Jack McGowan, who played Burke Dennings, and Vasiliki Maliaros, who played Kara's mother, both died after shooting was over. Blair and her on-screen mother also both suffered some serious injuries while hooked up to the malfunctioning harnesses on set. The scenes in which they were injured are actually the scenes in the movie, which likely contributes to why they have such an impact on audiences. The true takeaway from The Exorcist is the struggle and creativity that goes into creating a horror movie, and the impact that is left on audiences when it is done well. The actors and crew legitimately suffered for their art, and it created a film that has proven to withstand the test of time and will continue to do so. Finally, last but not least, number 1 on the Forbes highest grossing list is the Academy Award nominated and Oscar-winning 1975 classic, Jaws, directed by the infamous Steven Spielberg. Jaws was originally a novel written by Peter Benchley and published the previous year in 1974. His original intention with the novel was to bring attention to sharks in an entertaining light and encourage people to want to learn more about them due to the upswing in shark killings that had been happening in recent years. However, with a string of shark attacks in New Jersey in 1916 and circulating stories about stranded soldiers in World War II being eaten, people were already beginning to fear sharks in the ocean. Spielberg's portrayal of the shark as an intelligent, vengeful creature proved to be extremely detrimental to sharks' reputations, and the world's already problematic misunderstanding was only amplified, if not made worse. The aftermath of the film consisted of an uprising in shark fishing tournaments, and a fear that's still being combated today. However, a lot of progress has been made. Scientists and the general public are more aware and educated about sharks than they ever were before. One of the main attributes of the film is its establishment of the amount of potential in animatronic and mechanical special effects which can be used in horror films. A full-sized, terrifying hunk of rubber, plastic, wood, and lots of pneumatic hosing, Spielberg lovingly named the star of his movie Bruce. Despite his major role, Bruce often proved to be uncooperative, and there were many concerns about whether or not the film could even be finished. However, despite the difficulty, Jaws remains an inspiration for many movie special effects artists, and Bruce an awe-inspiring feat of human engineering. Another result of Jaws' release is the establishment of the niche genre of shark movies, which is still a popular staple of many horror fans' summer vacations. Some, of course, are better than others, but Jaws will always be the original.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Nobody can deny that the 70s played a crucial role in revolutionizing the horror genre. It opened new avenues, brought new subgenres into the mainstream, and its creations continue to terrify audiences 40 to 50 years after the fact. The movies on this list especially maintain their status as staples of the horror genre, and it seems like they're going to continue to stand the test of time.